another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. Today we're featuring a 350 Mustang. Now, this car has a fascinating provenance. We are huge Mustang fans here. I've had mine for, God, 35 years. Mine is car number 120. And this is what they call a continuation car. Now, before you run away, that doesn't mean it's a replica. That means it's licensed by Ford and Shelby, and it's built by some of the guys on the original crew that built these over 50 years ago. It's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating project. I think it's just great because there's so many people that never got a chance to experience these. Let's bring in Jim Marietta and Ted Sutton. These are two guys that were there at the beginning, and they're here for this as well. Gentlemen, how are you? Ted?
Oh, greetings, Jay.
Good to see you.
Good morning.
Jim, now, Jim, you're the kind of CEO of this. It's called Original Venice Crew. Those are the guys. They were built in Venice, California, the original cars, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys were involved, and now you're back. And how many of these are you going to do?
We're only going to do 36. This is the competition model.
Right.
So it's even more rare than the original.
Right.
And so we're only doing 36 because we only did 36 the first time around.
Right.
So this is like the second run.
Well, you know, it's interesting because I have a 2015 350, of which they only built 36 to honor the 50-year anniversary of those. And mine is car number 36.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. So I have a little special. And you were a fabricator. You were one of the kids working in the shop back in the day, correct?
That's correct. They actually, I went there looking for parts for a car, and they asked me what I needed it for, and long story short, they had me bring it by, and they told me I needed to go to work there.
Oh, okay.
I said, it's too far away. I said, that's 2 hours to drive here. He said, ride with Wally. Okay. The long story short, I never had a better job.
Now, how old were you at this time? Were you like 19, 20?
No, I'm probably 21.
Or 21,
yeah.
Okay. So you were there during the whole, it's Ken Miles and it's Carroll Shelby. Did it seem historic at the time? Did it seem like you were making history, or were you just working in a car shop?
No, it was, it had an air. It was very special, to say the least.
Yeah.
I knew I was working with trick stuff because we were making news in the motor car world.
Sure.
I came there as a guy that mainly, as a snot-nosed kid,
right,
was a drag racer.
Right.
Stoplight to stoplight. I don't care if it had fluid drive or what. It just, but anyhow, I had some welding skills and some fabrication skills, and I built a Willys drag car, and we ran it and so one thing led to another. Somebody asked me to put a Shelby engine in an Austin Healey 3000.
Okay.
And that's, of course, that made another junior Cobra out of it.
Right,
so,
that was a common swap back in the day. There were a few guys that did that.
yeah, I actually had Hot Rod Magazine come out and photograph it, but somebody else beat me to it.
Yeah, that's funny.
So anyhow, that particular problem I had, I didn't know how to convert the hydraulic clutch to regular linkage, which is what I was used to.
Okay.
So I went to Shelby's to get some parts, and they said, what are you using it for? And then the guy that I ran into was Phil Remington.
Oh, sure.
And I didn't know who he was. I just knew he was a handsome, very meaningful type of person.
Right.
And he said, you got to come to work here. And so eventually I got that sorted out, and I never regretted a second of it.
So Jim, tell me about this. Now you're a businessman. Now you're building these cars, which I imagine there's a lot more work involved than people realize, isn't there?
A lot more than I thought there was going to be, I can tell you.
Yeah.
So we start with an original K code, just like we did 50 years ago.
Right.
To continue the legacy. And so I buy them basically off the street. Most of the cars that we have actually drive in.
Right.
Then we take every nut and bolt out of the car. We media blast it down to the steel. We replace all the panels that need to be replaced.
Right.
And then we build it back like we did 50 years ago.
Now, does this have a CSX number?
Yeah, they will get it. I can't use CSX because of the laws.
Right.
But it's OVC SFM.
Right.
And then it gets a number.
Okay.
And so I have 1 through 36.
Okay.
This is a prototype, so it does not have a number.
Now, and these are streetable, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so it's a street car, and you start with a 289 block, right?
Correct.
I mean, 4-speed or 5-speed?
Oh, 4-speed.
So aluminum case?
Yes. Well,
Transmission?
we started out with aluminum cases, and we found out that they're difficult to
Yeah,
keep the tolerances.
Right.
So we buy a aluminum alloy carton now. That's a brand new piece.
Okay.
But we didn't, to try and recondition the old ones. The reliability is not as good as it should be, so we went to new stuff.
So is there any modern things on this, or is it all done exactly as it was?
The only modern things on it is that we put a electric kill switch the original didn't have,
Right.
and the fuel tank has bladder and foam, which the original didn't have.
Right. Okay.
And then and then this one now is unique because it has the independent rear suspension in it.
Oh, okay. Well, they never had that.
Which was, well, it was under development at the Shelby shop at the airport. And so I was lucky enough to work on that at the airport. And in the middle of testing it, they decided to nix it. And so through a long circuitous route that I won't go into here, I ended up with 3 of the original sets of the independent rear suspension. So we're duplicating that and putting it in this car.
Oh, very good. Now, my history is cloudy. I thought the racers were called 350R. They never were?
No, it was called GT350 competition model.
Okay, competition
The
model.
R came later.
Okay.
And I think where people picked it up is that the VIN number for Shelby was 6S for street, or
Right.
6R, or 5R for race.
Okay.
And so instead of saying competition model, people just started saying, well, it's an R. It's an R. It's an R model.
Because that's what I thought. Well, I've been in the Shelby Club for like 35 years, and they were always called R models, but never from Shelby. That's just one
That
of
was
those
competition
things
model back in the day.
And for people who don't know, and this is one of those things, where the 350 comes from, and we were always told how they come up with it, calling it 350, thinking is it 350 horse? No. It was 350 steps from Shelby's office to the workshop. Is that what it was?
That's the rumor, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
I wasn't in the meeting, of course, where that
Yeah,
took place.
yeah.
There was a set of steps involved too.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that was always the reason why. I think they did 350 to maybe give you the impression that it was 350
Right.
horsepower. But in reality, it was, I think it was 306.
Yeah, I believe that's about right.
Because the K-Code was 271 horse.
Correct.
And then Shelby did a little bit of magic to it and brought it to 306. And then they had a Paxton blower, which made it, what, 325 or
Yeah,
something?
yeah. I think they only did about 6 of those cars.
Okay. And straight through pipes, no mufflers, right?
No, this, because it's a street car,
Yeah.
this has mufflers on it.
Okay.
When we track it, we put straight pipes on it.
Okay, okay. And those are all the original seats. So you had the racing bucket for the driver and the standard passenger seat.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I remember. Even the holes drilled here.
Yeah,
And these holes are where the stock mirror used to be, and the racing mirror is now there, correct? Yeah. I mean, you've really done it exactly as it is. And it's great. So people can get a brand new GT 1965. And they're all 65 models.
they're all
correct?
65 models.
Okay, okay. Is it the plastic?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, look at that vent there.
I got the vent here, that's
Oh, yeah.
right.
And that's redone. Peter Brock wanted
Yeah,
it redone.
you know,
Yeah.
Peter Brock was on the build team for this car. In fact, we built this car at Peter Brock's garage.
Okay.
And so
In Henderson.
In Henderson,
Nevada.
Nevada.
Yeah.
And so when I was talking to Peter about doing it, he offered his garage for us to do it in.
Right.
And I said, look, I want to build it as close to the original as possible. And so Peter said, well, I'd like to redo the front fascia. And I said, well, Peter, come on, I want to keep it.
Yeah.
He said, Jim, he said, I had this on my drawing board when I left and I couldn't get it done. I'd like to upgrade it because that's what we were going to do.
Right.
He had to
So-
go to Europe for a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay,
And so I said, okay. Then he said, the hump in the rear window,
Yeah.
he said that was never to be there. He said, if that window would have come in when I was there, he said, I would have sent it back immediately. But I wasn't there, so the hump in the originals wasn't supposed to be there. So he redid the design on the rear window so there's no hump there anymore.
So are there any young kids under 70 working on this car?
Absolutely, yeah. Daniel and Robert are, do a lot of the work for us. I actually flare the fenders, and Ted on this car flared one of the fenders. Those are all hand flared, just like we did 50 years ago.
Yeah, obviously it's a labor of love. It must be a lot of fun Did your wives all think you guys are crazy to go back to work?
Absolutely, yes.
Did racing have this in the back?
No, we didn't.
So you got
That's
this
one of
in
the
the
things
back.
that's been modified from the original.
When we were working on them, doing the prototype independent rear suspension 50 years ago, it had four-wheel disc brakes.
Okay. It's got four-wheel disc.
It's
on it.
four-wheel disc,
Okay.
and it's the same disc that's on the front,
Right.
so they're interchangeable.
Okay. And dual masters, obviously?
We put a dual master in back in the day. It was a single.
Yeah, single.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we upgraded for some safety safety issues.
And of course, my all-time favorite mag wheel was
American
that
mag.
one.
Yeah.
That American mag. I always thought that was the prettiest with the,
Oh, they were.
with the gray centers like that. Explain this decal here.
Okay, well, that's the Terralinga symbol, and Carroll got involved with some people that wanted him to get a ranch down in Texas, and so he bought into half of a ranch, and they came up with this. I think Bill Neal
Yeah.
made that decal, and each one of those markings on there has a meaning. So the Terralinga means 3 languages, and so there were 3 Indian tribes on this farm, and that's what the 3 feathers are for.
Oh, okay.
And I forget now what the rabbit's about, but that's how that came about.
I mean, you guys were there at the beginning. I remember seeing these for sale in the early 70s. A buddy of mine almost bought one for $600 and said, nah, I'll give you $450. The guy said, no, I'm holding out for $6. And I mean, the price went way down.
Oh yeah.
And then it cost crazy. Are you guys obviously pleasantly surprised by how much respect and how much excitement there is about these cars years
I
later?
think the fact that the respect is that popped up with it, the fact that they're acknowledging that we meaning Carroll Shelby and his aggregation,
Right.
Brought the racing from Europe to United States in a rather strong, enunciated form.
The story goes that Lee Iacocca, who of course was the father of the Mustang, he was so afraid that the Mustang might be viewed as a secretary's car because it had the smaller engine. Chevy had a 327, this had a 289 or a 260. The engine was smaller than the competition, and he went to Shelby and said, make this a racing car. Were you guys skeptical when it first came in, or was the excitement always there from the first day?
I was only 17 at the time,
Oh,
so I
okay.
was pretty low on the totem pole,
Yeah.
if you will.
And I had no idea what it was doing. I later was told that these cars were out there beating the Corvettes.
Yeah.
But the SCCA, which is the governing body
Right.
of what they were racing with, said it's got 4 seats in it. It's not a sports car.
Right.
And there were some other problems with it. So they went to Shelby, and Shelby says, I'll fix that.
Right.
And this is what we came up with.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, let's open the hood. Let's show people what it looked like back in 1970, how simple engine compartments were. And of course, the famous hood pins. You know, I remember working on a Model A, and a friend came by with a Mustang, and I went, God, this is so complicated. Now, it looks so simple now compared to modern cars.
Sure.
I mean, there's all kinds of room. You can work in here, you get your hands in there. And I remember no self-respecting Mustang owner would not order the engine dress-up kit. You know,
Right.
Back in the day, they had an engine dress-up kit. You got chrome valve covers. It was finned. It would say Cobra or whatever on it, and it, you know, you could get the little chrome pieces. And when you open the hood, people go, ooh.
Ooh, right.
You open the hood of a modern car, a big sheet of plastic.
The plastic,
over here.
right.
You can't see anything, but just great, just great. And this is all the authentic stuff. I love this air cleaner. As you can see, the air was much cleaner back in 1965. You didn't really
Need a
too much.
filter.
Yeah, just a big screen to keep birds out of there. Yeah.
Yeah, on this particular, I'd like to point out that on this, we call those a plenum.
Right.
Those pieces were hand cut and hand welded together. Okay,
Right.
not like today you can buy them spun. This is all hand done pieces, and they're done by a guy by the name of Jerry Kirkpatrick,
Right.
who had the dragon snake, and he's a fabricator, and he's doing the plenums and the splash guards for us. One of the original guys from 55 years ago.
Now, let me give you a hard time. Electronic ignition or points in there?
No, and this one has electronic. I have to be honest.
That's okay.
yeah.
That's all right. It looks all stock. I'm just giving you a hard time. But I love the fact that, you know, so many times when people try to do a new version of an older car, they got the air conditioning, they got the tape player, they got just all the modern things. Whereas this is as close to the original as you can get because it's built by the original guys.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a street fighter.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And the horsepower is what, 306?
No, this is a, we start with the 289, original 289 block.
Right.
And we have them all made at the Carroll Shelby Engine Company.
Right.
For authenticity purposes. Right. So we Magnaflux and they Magnaflux and test the block, make sure it's up to.
So you start with the original block.
Original 289 block.
Wow, that's great. All so coded to the date and all that.
Yeah, everything. And then we use the original date-coded 289 block.
Right.
Rather than port the cast iron, we use aluminum heads, and it's bored and stroked to a 331.
Right. Oh, okay.
So has a hydraulic roller cam, and it puts out about 460 horsepower.
Oh, okay.
On pump gas.
Right.
Single 4-barrel, and it's about 425 pounds of torque.
And what does this car weigh now? Because, you know, it's so funny because people think a light car today is anything under or around 3,000 pounds. What's this, about 20, I'm guessing 24 and change?
It's about 20, it's about 2470, give or take, in that neighborhood.
Which is pretty light.
Yeah.
Which is pretty light. Well, and of course, you got your tag here. And of course, Ford is on board, right?
Yes, Ford has been very helpful. They've been very good to us. In fact, they invited us to a 3-day media meet up in Dearborn, where they were doing the 2019 GT350, 2019 Rs, and they had us to come up and give hot laps so they could compare what used to be to the new stuff.
So how do you like the new stuff? I mean, did you ever think you'd see like my 350R, 4-cam, flat plane crank? I mean, it's almost basically a European type engine,
right?
In a Ford Mustang.
Yeah. Well, and I was fortunate enough to drive one at one of the ride and drives, and they're so smooth, and the brakes are so great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great car.
Yeah, yeah.
And did you drive one of the GT500s yet?
Yeah, I've driven the new one.
What do you think of those?
It's 760 horsepower.
Yeah, and those are great cars.
But you know, there's something visceral about this, which is so much fun. Like on my 65, you can fling it around, and you know, and you can slide the rear end out, and you might. Obviously, there are faster cars, but certainly not many that are more fun. And to me, visually, this is still the best-looking Mustang. You know, a lot of times, guys get it right on the first try, and that's what they did with this one. I mean, I don't think there's been a better-looking Mustang than this one, than this model. To me, this is the epitome of it. It's small. You know, inside there's plenty of room. The doors are only this thick. You know, you get in modern cars and the doors are so thick because you got to have airbags and everything. But this thing, there's just a feeling of just rough and tumble in it when you're driving it.
That's right.
It's just fantastic. I mean, these shock towers and the brace and all this is what I remember back in the day, opening the issues of Hot Rod magazine. In fact, you guys were featured in a recent issue of Hot Rod.
Last month.
Yeah, magazine. Yeah. So very cool. Very cool. Let's see. Anything else we need to know?
Yeah, this, if you step this way and look back, you can see where Peter redesigned the front fascia. Okay. And he incorporated the bumper into that.
Made it out of fiberglass and it made it look good and lightweight.
You know, I didn't even notice that. Yeah.
And notice underneath there's some inlets for the brake ducts.
Okay.
We have rectangular brake ducts that just go straight back and deflect off, and does a very good job of cooling the brakes in the front. Much simpler.
Very cool. Very cool. So you're building 36 of these.
Only 36, right?
Oh, great. How many have you built so far?
We have orders for 8 so far.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, that should, by the time this airs, it'll probably all be sold. So, all right now. Yeah. Very
Get them while they're hot.
Get them while they're hot.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Can we take it for a ride?
Absolutely.
Cool. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right. Let's give it a shot. Oh, I found that sound.
You're good.
So tell me how it started for you. Did you grow up around here and you went to work there? How did that work?
No, I grew up in Ohio.
Oh.
and I got enamored with the Cobras.
Right.
And against my parents' better judgment, I quit high school, started working engine shops, and because I lived at home, I had plenty of money.
Right.
And so I used to go to all the every race the Cobra was at. And after a while, Al Dowd said, "Where do you live?" And I told him. He said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I want to go to work for you guys." So he asked what my background was, and my dad had classic cars. We had a Accord and an Auburn air floater.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked on those with my dad. And I said, "I work in a garage doing regular stuff." He said, "Well, here's the deal. If you get to the race, you can sign in on our ticket, so you don't have to jump the fence to get into the paddock anymore.
Oh.
And we'll feed you, find a place to sleep, but I'm not going to pay your transportation."
Right.
So I said, "Great." He said, "Deal." And we shook hands, and that was it.
Oh, that's great.
So I traveled with him through most of '64, and then during the last race, he said, "You want to come to work for us in California?" And I said, "Sure." He said, "I'll send you a letter." So in December of '64, he sent me a letter, said to be to work January 1st, 1965. Bring your tools, be ready to work. Well, I was there, and that's how I started.
Wow, that's
Started
great.
in the race shop.
And how long did you stay there? 4 years?
Oh no, I was only there a total of about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, when I worked on the independent rear suspension, I worked with an engineer from Dearborn,
Yeah.
and he gave me a couple special projects to do on my own. When they nixed it, he said, "Jim," said, "you go finish your education, get out of here."
Right.
He said, "You can always come back and do this later."
Right.
And so I took him up on his word, and that's what I did.
Well, Mom must have been thrilled with that.
Yeah.
Brings back a lot of memories of me driving mine last week.
Yeah. Yeah, how do you like the brakes on this? The brakes on
Yeah,
this
the
car.
brakes are pretty incredible. You know, it's funny. I know there are faster cars and there are better handling cars, but this just gives you such a connection,
Yeah.
such a feeling.
Yeah,
And
we-
that's what's fun, you know.
That's right.
To me, it's all about how a car makes you feel. Because I'm not a race car driver, so it's not like I'm racing anybody, but I want to just feel like I'm involved with the automobile, you
Yes.
know. And that's what this does. You know, looking over and seeing that hood scoop. I mean, it's funny when you realize that the four-cylinder Mustang is now 306 horsepower. It's the same as the most high-performance one you could buy 50 years ago.
50 years ago, right.
That always amazes me. You know, you guys, your story, it reminds me of a story I saw. I don't know whether it was on the History Channel, one of those, but there were a group of guys in like 1942 were on some battleship and that fought in France or wherever it was. And when they came back to New York, when the ship came back, all their girlfriends and wives were waiting for them. And then 50 years later, the same guys went in, recommissioned that ship, took it to France, and when they came back, the same girls are waiting for them at the dock. It was a great story.
Yeah.
It was just a great story, you know? So you took this to Le Mans, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, this very car?
This very car.
Do people go crazy?
Oh yeah, they loved it.
Yeah. You know, there's something about historic race cars. You know, it's one of those deals. I don't know whether it's nostalgia or whether if the cars are just cooler looking back then. But there's just something about the era. Like to me, there are certain road and track covers that stick in my mind.
Absolutely.
One of them is Carroll Shelby standing there with the Ford GT, the Cobra, and the Mustang.
Yes.
And I can't think of many modern magazine covers that hit me as the way that did. Maybe it's because we weren't inundated all the time. You've got the internet and all kinds of things. But when I was a kid, there really weren't color photos.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
right.
So to see Carroll Shelby, you know, that was like the greatest picture in the world when I was a kid.
Well, those were the magazine covers that enticed me to quit school and go to work for Shelby.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of those were Bartell.
Yeah. And who was the girl that rode Little Cobra? Was that Carol Connor?
Carol Connor, yeah.
And she was Shelby's secretary, is that what it was?
Oh, that I don't know about. But I tell you what, back in the day, he had great-looking secretaries. Let me tell you that.
Well, I must say it feels exactly like mine. I'm obviously tighter. I imagine you've updated with Heim joints and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Aircraft quality Heim joints.
Yeah.
Some of our Heim joints are $150 a pop on this baby.
Really? Wow.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't use the cheap stuff.
Obviously no power steering and no power brake.
No.
That takes a bit of leg muscle to get it to stop.
No, we have Pirelli P1s on it now.
Oh, okay.
When we track it, we use the Goodyear race tires.
But they were bias plies back in the day.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That wasn't...
So the reason I put the Pirellis on for you today is with the race tires, it's two-directional.
Right.
These are easier to drive with.
Tires with cheap clutches they used to
Yeah.
Tell me about the 98 I on the door. I know 98 was Carol's favorite number. What is the I?
The I stands for independent rear suspension.
Oh, okay. Should have had this back in 65.
Yeah.
Everybody. And the cool thing is, it's built by the original guys.
Yeah, we're on the original crew. Ted was the crew chief.
I love when the plugs clean everything up when you put it in.
Right.
I was afraid it might be too quiet.
No, yeah, not too quiet. Yeah.
If I bought these as mufflers, I'd want my money back.
Yeah. You should hear it with a straight pipe.
Oh, yeah. Mine has straight pipe, but yeah. It tracks very nicely. Why do you need to start with a K-code Mustang? Why couldn't you just start with a Mustang V8? Because you're changing everything anyway.
Because I want to continue the legacy of the K-code. That's what we started with.
Oh,
I want to continue the Shelby legacy.
Yeah,
starting with a K-code.
Because the K-codes are gotten expensive.
Yeah, a little bit.
Now, if someone wanted to bring you their K-code car, could you convert theirs?
Yeah, I'd do that.
What's this got? 411s? What's the rear end?
350.
Oh, it is 350. Okay. Did you ever meet Henry Ford II? Did he come by the shop?
I can't say I met him, but I saw him walk through the shop a couple times.
Yeah.
With an entourage.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Henry Ford II, just his body language, commanded respect.
Yeah,
He was that kind of guy. Henry Ford III is the one who helped me get a license for Ford Motor, yeah. Henry, I'm sure you know him or met him.
Yeah, very nice guy.
He is a really down-to-earth young man.
Very nice guy, very nice guy. When I started out at the dealership and worked his way up, nice kid.
So when I talked to Edsel, I said, Edsel, you did a wonderful job with your son. Yeah. He is truly a young gentleman. Down-to-earth guy.
Yeah.
If you didn't know who he was, he's just another guy having lunch.
Right. Did Carroll live long enough to know you were going to do this?
No.
Yeah,
no, unfortunately, he passed away 1 year before we started this project.
Yeah, that's too bad. But he had a pretty good run considering his health condition.
Certainly did.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun having a high-performance car you can work on yourself.
Oh, yeah.
You know, modern cars, you can't do anything. Yes, you can change a plug to do the oil change and all that kind of stuff. You get involved with the car.
Yeah, that's the fun part about this car. You can open the hood and you can see what's going on and you can work on it. And, you know, the new cars, if you don't have a computer, you're screwed.
Yeah, right. I like the big mirror. It works well.
Oh, yeah. that we had in '65.
This is always one of my favorite Ford engines. I never liked the 292 with the 312 block, the Y block.
Yeah, the Y block. That was
This thin wall 289 high revving.
Yeah.
It was the most European at the time American engine to me.
Right.
You know, when it was set up with Weber carburetors and the Cobra valve covers, I thought it was just the coolest looking setup.
It was. Yeah, and they ran great. And you know, it's not like today. We'd do at least 2, if not more, races on one engine build.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And each engine builder had their own little tricks.
Yeah.
You know, Jack Hoare and Jim O'Leary and those guys, they were just, each one of them had their own little thing that they would do to get the engine the way they wanted it.
How many guys were there that worked at Shelby? What was the total about?
Well, the total over the years was probably like 150.
Right.
But at any one time in the race shop, there was only like 40 people.
Right. And what did you make a week back then? $100 a week, something like that?
Yeah, something, maybe 120 weeks, something like that.
Yeah. You couldn't afford to buy one if you were building them, right?
No, couldn't, no.
What a thrill. You know something? When I was a kid, I wasn't much for sports. And Hank Aaron and Bobby Orr and all those guys. You guys were my heroes, so.
Let me tell you, I understand your feeling. I loved it too.
Yeah. So,
And you're the keeper of the flame for us.
well, you guys
so
are
the rest of us can enjoy it.
I want to thank you for doing it,
Well,
and
thank
thank
you,
you
Jay.
for bringing back a piece of history so people can feel what it's like and to drive the car that sort of changed the world.
I'm glad you enjoyed it as much as we do.
Oh, it's great fun, you guys. Thanks so much.
Well,
Once
thank
again,
you.
All right,
gentlemen,
well,
my pleasure and
all right.
honor. Okay.
All right, bye for now.
See you guys next week. Pretty cool, huh?
Mm-hmm.